Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
The last flight out is the dramatic story by Nguyen Van Bar, whose heroic actions were highlighted in the 2015 Oscar-nominated film The Last Days in Vietnam. It's recounting the pivotal moments leading up to the fall of Saigon in 1975. Delighted to say that I'm joined live on the line from Seattle. His son, Miki, who joins us this morning. Nikki, good morning or good afternoon from us. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Giles. Glad to be here. Glad to share my father's story with you.
Pleasure is all mine. I suppose that the thing is, we are fascinated by Vietnam, but for a lot of people, it's only about the Americans. Obviously, films like Platoon, Apocalypse Now, etc. And for many people, I suppose, for them, it all finishes in 1973 with dramatic pictures of obviously helicopters leaving the American embassy in what was then Saigon. But of course, the war continued, lumbered on for another 2 years until 1975.
That's right. The U.S. government pulled out in 73, and but there's still a lot of U.S. military activity in the area in Saigon. And so by the end of April 1975, the communists and the North Vietnamese came in and encircled the city of Saigon. And by April 30th, 75, they took over the whole country. They took over Saigon.
So what was your father's role? What was he doing in Saigon leading up to sort of 1975 then?
Yeah, so since 64, my father was a Air Force pilot for the South Vietnamese Army, working side by side with the U.S. And so by the end of April, basically he was waiting for orders in terms of what to do next with himself and his crew. But at the same time, quickly realized that his commanding officer and the others in the leadership, South Vietnamese, had already, got their family and fled the area. Because if any one of us or any of the South military folks or government personnel would have been captured, it would have been years in re-education camps. So he decided to, at the last minute there, figure out that, hey, it's just us now. We got to go save ourselves and our family.
Because there were quite a few things that happened between 73 and the fall of Saigon in 75. The U.S. Congress, Nixon obviously has Watergate, and that gets his attention away because he had made promises to the South Vietnamese leadership. Is it Chu who was the leader of the South Vietnamese? At that time, I'm trying to get my memory going at this point. But basically, the Congress had cut funding. There was no money, and I think at some point, I think the Arvan Army were outnumbered something like 6-1 in the Central Highlands, and so it was kind of every person for themselves, wasn't it? Which must have been terrifying and very troubling for your father.
Oh, absolutely. He just didn't know the actual day by day, activities, the outcome of things. And to your point, the war became unpopular in the late 60s and even more popular towards the tail end of the whole conflict. And so at the time there, myself, I was 6.5-year-old. So the story that I share with you really here is coming from the perspective of a 6.5, while at the same time bringing in some of the stories that my dad shared throughout his memoir.
As a 6.5-year-old, I was a 6-year-old growing up because again, the conflict in Vietnam is not from when the Americans arrived. The conflict in Vietnam goes back to Indochina, Bien Dinh Phu, and you could say the showing off of colonial shackles. But there's been a state of war on and off, hasn't there, for decades in that particular region of the world. So,
well, exactly. The French occupied it for a long time, and then Japan came in the 40s, in the 50s as well. There occupied it, and so it's been Vietnam country-wise. It's been a very location, minerals, natural resources, beachside. It's highly desired, and so it's been occupied, attacked.
So
for a long time,
as a 5-year or a 6-year, did you actually understand what was going on, or was it just you just thinking, oh well, it's getting very interesting here, and it's because I suppose when you're 6 years old, did you really have an idea that things were becoming a little bit, shall we say, desperate?
Yeah, I grew up on the military base. I grew up on the barracks, and so seeing my dad go off to missions on a daily basis, seeing the fear of my mom, and for sure, it's just there are moments in my childhood where it's very vivid.
So this is just outside Saigon, in Saigon, or whereabouts was the actual just the big one of the big bases, as it were?
Correct. It's Bin Hoa, which is about an hour away from Saigon, so it was very close to the town.
So when you speak to your father in this memoir, what's the moment he decides we've got to go? And not only that, I mean, we all, again, I mentioned the 73, those horrible pictures of people clinging onto Hueys and stuff, trying to get out of Saigon. Presumably at that point, your father decides, I have to get out of here. He can't put you on a small fighter jet. So what's he gonna pick up? And also, who's he going to know? Because presumably if he's going to go, if he tells 3 people, they're going to want to bring their family, and families are big, and the next thing you know, you're not going to be able to take off. So was it a we're going today sort of thing?
Yeah, it was the April the 28th of 48 hours in terms of making that decision. And so it was, again, last minute. At this time, he had the radio. He heard on the radio, again, many of the commanding officers have already left their post and, saved themselves and their family. And you're right. We see iconic images in the media and Time Life magazine with folks thinking the same in terms of the Vietnamese folks, others in the embassy, trying to scurry away from there, trying to find any sort of means to get out. The North had already bombed the major Tan Son Nhut airport, and so there was no way to take a flight out in the last few days there. Hence, my dad figured out now it's time to. It was just he used his Chinook as his horse, right? Well, Wild West at this moment. It was just him and his horse, and trying to get out of town. So
have the communists? I mean, because there's that image of the communist tank crashing through the palace, isn't there? Is it the presidential palace in Saigon? And that is because I read a lot about people like Peter Arnold, who was a journalist who stayed, because nobody was quite sure what was going to happen next. Now, if you're a Western journalist, you kind of got a better chance, if anything, is going to kick off than being in the military, to put it mildly.
Yes, yeah. The image we see of folks walking up the stair of the ladder, that wasn't the embassy. The embassy was a few blocks further down, but it just that image there kind of depicts the dire desperation at that moment in time, trying to get out of there. So
you presumably, your brothers, your sisters, your mum just picked up everything up and just headed to the Chinook. And what do you remember? Well, what did your father say? The situation. I mean, presumably there's no air traffic control. You've got to fuel up quickly and then and where are you heading to?
Yeah. So my dad, my father told my mom a few days earlier. Well, first off, he moved our family to Grandma's house, which is in the middle of Saigon. So we were off the barracks because the barracks at this time was heavily bombed. And so we were at our grandma's house on April 28th, 27th, 28th, and 29th. And he told my mom that if you hear me coming, get the kids ready, get the bags ready, because I'm going to come and get you. But we didn't know that he landed the Chinook helicopter, and as you know, your aunt knows, the Chinook is a huge helicopter, twin rotors.
One big section.
Exactly. Hear that from a mile away. So what he did was he landed, the Chinook right in front of my grandma's little soccer field that they had back then, and blew up, just a lot of debris everywhere, and dropped that Chinook right in front of the yard there, and told the coal pilot to drop the back hatch. And my mom had my baby sister. was 7 months old in her arm and little bags, and just ran into the back of the Chinook. And my father quickly, lifted up and got the heck out of the city there.
And this is incredibly dangerous. I mean, because obviously there are people wandering around on the back of tanks, on the back of whatever, with rocket propelled grenades, you name it, to have a crack at you, and that it could have ended very, very quickly. And the other thing is, he's got to fly low, but where's he trying to get to? Is he just trying to get out? But that's fine. But where was he trying to? Because Cambodia's not an option, or Laos. So what's the plan, Miki?
Right, exactly. So the plan was to. Once, the family got on the Chinook, the plan was to head further south and rendezvous up with a couple other of his Chinook, peers.
Yeah.
And that was the thinking. So we got further south from that, from Saigon, and loaded up on fuel and food ration, because the thinking was perhaps go try to find some remote island or some place further away from the hot zone. And that's what they did, and loaded up. At the same time, they heard on the radio that there were U.S. Navy, U.S. fleet still out in the Pacific.
Yeah. And
so the thinking was to switch course, head out in the Pacific to see if there's a U.S. carrier, perhaps large enough where he can land on and escape. So out to the Pacific he goes. And in the Chinook itself were 15, 16 folks, himself, his co-pilot, the gunner and mechanic, and, respective families and girlfriends of his crew.
The thing that it's astonishing me, because obviously the South Vietnamese Air Force at that point, Chinooks notwithstanding, have kind of stopped to function because they can't get the fuel, they can't get the technical people to take off and whatever. So presumably the North Vietnamese stroke Chinese stroke, whatever you want to say, do they have jets buzzing around? Or were you just going on please excuse the pun, on a wing and a prayer, that you weren't going to suddenly see, a MiG appear on the left-hand side or something?
Oh, I'm sure that was a big part of his concern, in terms of the enemy, shooting him down either from the air or from the ground.
Yeah.
And so, that was, a part of his day-to-day, flying activities through the years, because in the South there was not only the North but also insurgents from the South as well, all over the countryside. So he couldn't tell who were the good guys or the bad guys. But to your point, in terms of flying out to the Pacific there, who's to say that he could have gotten shot out by a jet fighter coming by? But he never shared that part of there's nothing like that in terms of being worried about a jet coming.
So how does he sort of contact so he heads towards the American fleet? He can't wave a white flag out the window, can he? So presumably everybody's shouting for all they're worth, saying, we are refugees, we're friendlies, please pick us up. And surely the Americans might have said, well, nothing to do with, that's an English accent, but, nothing to do with us, because it's not our party anymore. You might have been sort of refused. So what's he takes, there's quite an incredible action he takes, isn't there?
Yeah. So exactly. Not knowing if there was a ship out there, let alone ship large enough from that standpoint. But he heads in that direction, knowing that let's just give it a shot, and the risk of not having enough gas, or the risk of this or that, for sure, in terms of landing in the water or crashing in the water, all of that. But we were really lucky to have spotted a ship in the distance, and so he heads towards the ship. But as he gets closer to it, we can see the U.S. Crew below, shooing him off in the film Last Days in Vietnam, and pictures on our website there. We show the U.S. crewman kind of shooing him back, but he kept persistently hovering around, circling the ship, and he wasn't going to give up because there was really no other ship option close by. And finally, he was able to get on the radio and speak with his broken English to the captain below. And the captain below said, let's go for it. Let's figure out how we can help this the pilot and the Chinook. Because mind you, the ship itself was too small. We found out many years later on the name of the ship was the USS Kirk, and the name of the captain was Captain Paul Jacobs.
And so, sorry.
And so what he did was finally hovered the Chinook behind the ship towards the stern, the rear of the ship. It's a frigate. Submarine destroyer, had all of the surveillance equipment, radar, sonar, antenna, all of that. And Captain Paul Jacobs kept the ship moving steady forward because of the swells, the current. Had to keep that keep it steady.
Yeah.
And my father had to fly backwards while at the same time maneuvering the Chinook in such a way that it was able to hover 15, 20 feet above the rear deck, and told the crew to open the starboard, the left side door open, and get ready to have the crew jump down onto the deck.
Whoa, that's some insane flying. I mean, that's some skill. You're in the open ocean. You're in a Chinook, which is a big thing. But hey, the ship's a little bit bigger than that. There's wind, and I mean, I can remember when I rode my first bike without stabilizers, and that's still in my memory. And I was about 6 then. Okay, so presumably you remember this pretty well, Miki.
Yes, for sure, absolutely. So yeah, everything's all set, everything's in place. He's hovering, he's holding it steady. And we all jumped down. My mom dropped baby sister down to the crew below, and they caught her. Many years later on, we had a reunion with the crew members, and Mr. Kent Shipman was one of them, and he said, "Yeah, my baby sister, adult did later on." Mr. Kent Shipman goes, "Yeah, I'm the guy that caught you. It was basketball, from that standpoint." So we were really lucky that the captain and the crew member took their risk and just standing below this huge helicopter. So
yeah, I mean, everybody gets, so presumably everybody apart from the necessary crew get off. I mean, you can't go, he can't land it, and it's not, so what does he do?
So we all jumped down. I remember jumping down, and everybody exits the Chinook, except my dad. He's still flying it, but they quickly push us all inside. Want anybody running around on the deck. At the same time, we see images of other smaller Huey Chinooks. Huey helicopters landing on the ship, and the crew pushing the little Hueys over to make room for the next, Huey that would land. So families coming out of there, but my dad's Chinook was just simply too large to do that. So once everybody exits the Chinook, he hovered away, and he wasn't going to go back to land, or anything. His family was on the ship, and he needed to get himself out of the Chinook and be with his family. And so that's what he did. He flew away about 100 yards away, and we see pictures of all of this years later on. But he hovers away, and at this moment in time, he's keeping it steady, hovering 10 feet above the water, and at the same time taking off all of his gear, his gun, his unstrapping the laces of his boots, and getting down to his undergarment. And once he was ready, he gave the thumbs up to the captain. And by this time, the captain had already ordered the crew to get a little skiff on the water to to recover or rescue. It was either one of those two, right? And thumbs up. He opens the port door to his left there, and with his right leg kicks the control stick so that the Chinook would lean to the right, and at the same time dive over to his left.
Whoa!
Out into the water, and the picture says 1,000 words. We'll send it to you. But he dives into the water, and he shares, tries to dive into the water 3 or 4 times, but the salt water is just so buoyant, it kept pushing him back up. But eventually he was able to, quickly get in the water and swim away from the explosion behind him. Yeah.
I mean, sorry, it's lost for words. I mean, just diving out of a Chinook, and if you've been in a Chinook or you've been next to a Chinook, you know the sheer size of these things. That's like saying, I'll just leap out of a light aircraft and to get away, relatively unscathed. Amazing stuff. The books. This book is all, is look at the incredible escape story, but it's also a look at the Vietnamese experience afterwards, because you suddenly find yourselves. We're lucky in Europe. Most of us aren't uprooted like this and going somewhere else, to go somewhere else. And what is this presumably is the next part of the story, or an integral part of the story?
Well, we start out with chapter 1 being this exodus out. But throughout the book, there were moments, personal moments, other types of battle stories that he shares within in the book. So broken out into 3 sections, both pre-75 and post-75. And you mentioned, once they picked him up, he got on the ship. It was the first moment, the first day of tasting freedom. And so he shares in the book how we were only on that ship for 24 hours and didn't get the name of the captain, didn't get the name of the ship. From there, we were 24 hours later. Another large ship came by and picked up, not only our family, but hundreds of other families who exited the same way onto Guam, Wake, and then finally to San Diego, Camp Pendleton, north of San Diego, a Marine base there, and was on that camp for a few months, and then until a church here in the Seattle area sponsored us, and that's how we, eventually got here to Seattle. So the refugee story from 75 and the boat people stories that we hear in the news back in the mid 80s, in the early 80s. That was part of the Vietnamese diaspora in terms of those that were lucky enough had the chance to escape from that standpoint.
And, it's the conflict itself has huge scars on America, but especially Vietnam itself. And it must have been quite something for your father, because obviously he's an officer in the Air Force. He's a professional. He's got a good life. Your family has, and then he finds himself. There's nothing wrong with Seattle, but you understand where I'm coming from. Suddenly he is just some guy. There's no standard. He doesn't walk into a job straight away. And a lot of presumably Vietnamese nationals who were in the States or in Canada and whatever in the mid 70s had a pretty tough time. And there's presumably an undercurrent of racism and you name it going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He jumped out of the Chinook with just a shirt and boxers. That's how we started here in America. Absolutely nothing. Started all over again. The one thing that he did from a skill set standpoint was broken English. Because in the early 60s and the late 60s, he got a chance to come to the U.S. for flight training and picked up a lot of English. So that really helped out in terms of assimilating and gaining, some foothold, learning the language. And then my mom had no English. So, both parents had to start all over again and went back and, technical school and eventually became electronic technician. So,
as you mentioned the Vietnamese diaspora. I mean, in Europe, obviously a lot of boat people came to Hong Kong, quote unquote, but the community itself, those who were in Vietnam, fled in 75, came to the States. Presumably, even though you're all over the States, there's quite a very strong network. Would that be right saying? I mean, because obviously there's the language, there's a shared experience, and it is also all of a sudden happens. I mean, from the flights in 73 when the Americans are trying to get young children out on the big galaxies and whatever all the time. I mean, has that defined? Do you think that defines the Vietnamese experience in the States? And a second part, because I haven't got a lot of time, unfortunately, but now Vietnam is a tourist destination and people go back and US servicemen go back. I mean, did your father go back? Have you been back to a place that you remember last time when you were 6 years old? And what, I can't even imagine what that's like.
Yes. You brought up so many things.
I know that's
there's a lot to talk about, but yes, my dad finally, once everything settled down, and he came back in the early 90s. Scared to death coming back, but he had to. My grandfather was getting sick, and so came back. Myself, I came back several times, lived there actually for a couple years in 2016, 2017. And so post 75, the country was very, very difficult to live, lack of food and lack of means. But eventually, as time went on, the country became a better, prosperous today in a lot of ways. And so, but that's Vietnam. For the folks that resettle here, a lot of Vietnamese came to Southern California in the Houston area. I joke with my mom, wishing maybe that a little warmer than Seattle, but blessed to at least start a new life and the freedom here in the U.S.
It's also a subject that people want to talk about. I mean, here we come up to the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon, and a lot of people will be remembering because they kind of know what they're doing. It had such an impact on society in Europe, especially in the States, with the anti-war movement, brings down a president. You could argue with Nixon. So it's timely for this to be discussed again. What are you hoping that people who will be looking or will be reading Last Flight Out? What are you hoping that they, or what was your father's hope for this memoir?
Yeah, you started out the conversation with the films and Rambo, Chuck Norris, many of the sensationalized. Yeah. Yes, but I wanted to put this book together for my dad. That was his dream, because again, writing these short stories in publishing newspapers get recycled. It was always his dream to have one solid book be put together. He passed away in 2013, so this was one of the things that myself and my mom wanted to put together in honor for him. And the timing of it was proper in the sense that, yes, this in the next month or two here will be the 50th year remembrance of the fall of Vietnam, and I wanted to pay tribute, not only to my father, but also highlight one individual out of many other types of heroic and courageous stories of other Vietnamese families trying to leave the country. And so this is a tribute. This is a family story. This was my father's story, his story, right? History.
Yeah,
from that standpoint.
Indeed. The book is called Last Flight Out. It's been edited and it's by Miki Nguyen. Listeners, you'll be able to you can order it from our own virtual bookstore. And if you think that this is the story of Vietnam is Platoon Apocalypse Now, please do yourself a favor and read this, because as in all things, the roots and the impact are much more complex than that. If people want to find you online or find out more about the book or indeed or the TV, the documentary and stuff like that, the images, where is the best place to find you or more about the book?
I would encourage folks to take a look at the film that we were involved in 10 years ago that got 2015 Oscar nominated, The Last Days in Vietnam, written and produced by Rory Kennedy. I share the story about my father in that film, and so that's on Netflix as well. And so with that, you can the website that we put together for the book itself, winvangba.com. Is on there. So yeah, there's a lot of great behind the scenes moments, behind the scenes pictures and images to showcase what he did.
Well, this book is called Last Flight Out. You can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Miki, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today.
Yeah, thank you, Gil. I appreciate the time and opportunity.